As a Falcon fan, you're always prepared to be let down, but maybe this year's Falcons team has turned a corner and is prepared to rise up.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, guys, if you know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, joined as usual to wrap up the week by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. Nothing but illustrious guests here on the podcast. And we're here going to be talking about keys to victory and whether or not the Falcons are due for a letdown and some of the post bye week changes that we saw unfold against the Saints. Should some of those changes keep going? Are there more changes that the Falcons should make to their roster? We'll get into all of that on today's episode. But before we get there, guys, I want to thank each and every one of you that are everydayers to this podcast. I know the Spotify Wrapped just dropped. I'm being hit up by everybody flexing on how many hours of Locked On Falcons that they have listened to over the last year. And I appreciate the love and the appreciation that you guys give me and the respect that you give me for listening. Let's see who can top out each other with most hours listened to this year. Let's make it a competition. But all those everydayers out there, we definitely appreciate you. And if you want to join the everydayer crowd so that you next year on the Spotify Wrap can flex your hours listened to, thousands upon thousands of hours listened to, go and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So all that said, Jarvis, my friend, welcome back to Locked On Falcons. We didn't have you last week due to the holiday season, but we're back in store for the Falcons and coming off a very impressive win against the New Orleans Saints. It felt so good to see the Falcons physically dominate the Saints in the way that they did last Sunday. But, this game upcoming against the Jets, it's easy to sort of think, oh, okay, all's good in Atlanta. They figured it all out. They came out of the bye looking like a brand new team. And I guess the question I ask you, Jarvis, is there concern that, that is true? Or are we due for a letdown game? Or is this a team that is turned the corner to becoming the team that we thought they would be? I've been saying all year long on this podcast, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And is this the team that's geared up to finish strong? Or is this the same old Falcons that, every time they take a step forward, they're liable to take a 2 steps back the following week? What say you?
First, let me say this. In order to turn the corner, I really feel like, I visualize me being in a car. And doing with my pinky, you know what I'm saying, driving the big boy, you know what I'm saying, like I drive, I'm a big man, so I like to drive big cars, so that's how I get down. So I don't think the Falcons are in the car. I think they're walking. I think they're taking some steps. They're taking some necessary steps in the right direction. And I feel like this game right here, if we see what we saw last week in that, specifically in that run game and how they were able to execute on offense and be able to move the football up and down the field and finish in the red zone, I really feel like they can get in a car and start to turn the corner because we haven't seen back-to-back wins, since the beginning of the season. So, and we're having a conversation with Maria Martin, who's on Locked On ATL Sports podcast. Y'all check that out, by the way. And she was saying, like, I didn't notice this, and it probably makes sense that she said it. They haven't won 3 games since Arthur Smith, 3 games in a row since Arthur Smith been here. So when you have that, type of situation going on, I feel like until they're able to get the back-to-back wins and get some consistency on that offense, let's see another game where the offensive line dominates. Like, we don't talk about Falcons offensive or defensive line doing that ever, hardly really, or it feels like ever. But, I think it's going to take another game like what we saw last week in order for the Falcons to get in the car and turn the corner, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Like, I think it's going to be a challenge against this Jets defense that, you know, again, maybe I'm biased here, but you know, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this Saints defense is tough," and I'm like, "They're all right, they're all right." You know, like they got a good secondary, but like you know, their D line ain't all that. You know, a certain
a little
someone
long
that
in the tooth. So
yeah, a certain someone that may or may not have been the estranged father of a certain Falcons right tackle. You know, it's like he's a little bit of a deadbeat dad. You know, like I don't know if
he paid child support. He paid child support last week.
I don't know what's going on with him, but he ain't the same father that he used to be.
No,
you know,
not at all. Not at all.
So, you know, the fact that the Falcons pushed around the Saints, you know, front wasn't a shock to me. It would be a shock to me if they could push around this Jets front. You know, so like again, I think yes, I think
Big Q.
Yeah. They got 2 Q Williams on the team that like to run around and hit people, you know. So that's a violent family. It's a very violent family, you know. So
Daddy child support for them.
We're already off the rails. All right.
Early, right?
But yeah, I think you're right. If they can show that they can push around this front, and not even like, you know, I don't need them to run for 200 yards. It's, you know, you get like 130 yards or something like that, you know, and just not make it so that, you know, those guys, Q, are out there making the plays that they need to make in order to stymie this offense, just sort of keep them in check. Like that, to me, I think you're right, is going to be a very good indicator that this team has turned a corner, and that this team that we've been talking about all year long, it's like, when are they going to break through? When are they going to step up? Is poised to finish strong.
All right. Yeah, I think that, you know, and it all starts by having some type of foundation or a base, right? Because getting back to, you saw Arthur Smith talking about, hey, they actually hit last week, you know, coming into the game against the Saints, and a lot of the players were talking about that post game and like, oh yeah, like we understand that, hey, this is different. This is something that we need to make sure we focus in on. He talked about ball security leading up to this week. You saw, you know, about the conditions being pretty bad and all that stuff. So, like, I think there's a more of a focus. Like the more focused I feel like this team can be, like they understand who they are. Like you have those moments of silence, like, all right, you know, I would love to be able to pass for 270 yards and throw for 3 tuds and all that stuff. But I got 3 backs that can get it done. And now I understand that, hey, that number 1 back, that starter should be 7, you know, and then we work our way to 25, and then once he start wearing folks down, 84 can be sprinkled in to give you a couple gimmick plays from here and there. Maybe you can get him on a jet sweep instead of, you know, or you know, have him on a jet sweep. So those are the type of things that I feel that, you know, they're working themselves into, and you're starting to feel like, okay, this is who we thought we were coming into this season. And and it all starts with the offensive line. Like Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarrett are going to have another game like they did last week, because and Matthew Bergeron as well. Like, and I got to give him some credit. I give him credit where everybody was willing to listen. We haven't been talking about Matthew Bergeron, and that's a good thing when you talk about offensive linemen, because rookie offensive linemen haven't fared well in Falcons uniform, you know, in these past decade. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it out there, you know. I can go back as far as I possibly can without, you know, remembering. But I think that where this offense is, and I think defensively too, you know, like this is a favorable matchup. When you talk about the offensive line, the Jets having issues protecting their guy, you know, I'm still trying to figure out why Aaron Rodgers is trying to get back early, like and play behind their offensive line with an alleged torn Achilles. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it as far as with them, and then as far as the defense goes. So offense, you know who you are, run the football, and I feel like this defense can get to a point where they can, you know, take advantage of what they're supposed to take advantage of.
Yeah. And we'll continue to elaborate and discuss this matchup with some other keys to victory for the Falcons if they want to escape the Big Apple with a win. And we'll continue that on today's episode with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And guys, it's time to score this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with a winning $5 money line bet. And while the weather might be cooling down, FanDuel's heating up with some of these great bets. That's $150 if your team wins, and FanDuel doesn't know if your team is the Atlanta Falcons, right? FanDuel, for all you know, FanDuel knows that, your favorite team is the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles. Right, and you can get that straight up money line bet. Although, maybe not this weekend. That's going to be a little tough for the Eagles against the 49ers. But anyway, whatever you want to bet on, FanDuel's the place to go. Right, you got spreads, you got player props, over under, so much more. Right, if you're wanting to bet this Falcons Jets game, the spread has moved. Right, the Falcons were favored by 3. Now they're favored by 1.5. I think that has something to do with the Aaron Rodgers being back at practice thing. So, do with that what you will. All you got to do is go to fanduel.com/lockedon, and you can, heat up these deals. FanDuel is an official betting partner of the NFL. So continuing today's episode, before we talk keys to victory for the Falcons in Week 13, I want to plug the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel, the first of its kind. Locked On Sports Today, giving you the lowdown on all the big sports stories across all the leagues. And of course, if you're, you don't care about what's going on in the NHL or the NBA or whatever, which is fine, to each their own, and you just focus on what's going on with the Atlanta Hawks, what's going on with the Falcons, the Georgia Bulldogs, all the local teams, Atlanta Braves as well. You got Locked On Sports Atlanta has a 24/7 streaming channel as well. So go check that out if you can. So, Jarvis, keys to victory. This is what we always talk about at the end of the week. We've already kind of touched upon the Falcons' ability to sort of control this game at the line of scrimmage, but I'll give you the floor to discuss, to either further elaborate on that point or to talk about other factors that you think will be keys to victory for this team against the Jets.
Don't turn the football over now. I think Desmond Ridder understands what he has to do in order to be able to have some success in his offense, and for this organization to believe that he can be the quarterback, at least if not for the next 10 years, at least for the next year. Because if it's a year-to-year thing, like you get away with a cheap quarterback, and you can kind of continue to build in that light. But if he's not, understand what you got to do in this offseason, because, like you said, you already built the weapons around him, and he has to show and prove himself to be a guy that can work within this offense. Like we talked about before we talked about the illustrious folks over at FanDuel, that running the football is that's the money. That's where the money is, right? That's where your investment is as far as in this run game. And you invested money on your offensive line. So, hey, follow the money. If you want to come up with a game plan, follow the money. And those guys came through for you last week. And I think that, going back that route, as far as the offensive game plan, I think that can help you, because we know how sticky the Jet secondary is. They those guys can cover. So I think that, for them to be able to move the football like they want to, I think they're gonna have to establish themselves as running the football. As far as defensively, I think there are some things that they can be aggressive. They can try to force a little bit more turnovers in this game. They can try to be a little bit more aggressive, right? And then with the NFC Player of the Week, Jesse Bates, hey, man, you could do a pick six for Derek Carr. You could damn sure do a pick six for Tim Boyle, So I think I'm not going to call this a W game, a doubleable. I'm not going to say the word. I'm not going to say the full word. You know what I mean? I'm not going to call this that type game. I'm not going to go there. But this is a game that the Atlanta Falcons should be in. They should be able to take advantage of this matchup. There are some spots that they can win. However, if they don't, there are some spots that the Jets can take advantage of too. But in order for Desmond Ridder to have some success, he can't turn the football over.
Yeah. Yeah. Every game the Falcons play, pretty much with a few exceptions, is going to be a one possession game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And, I think I feel better about the Falcons' chances of winning that type of game with Desmond Ridder than I do with Tim Boyle at this point. But, the fourth quarter version of Desmond Ridder that has been so clutch this year has typically only been that way at home as opposed to on the road.
Yeah.
And I think with the Falcons, you want, if you can play that sort of clean football game that we haven't really seen from Desmond Ridder on the road, where he can play mistake free and turnover free, like that increases your margin for error. So we're not sitting there panicking with 5 minutes to go being like, I hope, we can score. I hope we can get a stop or whatever. That seems to be the case every single week. So I hope for the first three quarters, again, I don't expect the Falcons to drop a 30 burger on this Jets defense. It's one of the better defenses in the NFL, but I hope that they can play mistake-free enough where they're not giving this Jets offense, which has basically been non-functional for the last month, unless teams, give them the football with pick sixes and turnovers. Like the last week, their only scores came off of pick six and a turnover where they gave them a short field and they were able to get a touchdown there. And so if you just can not shoot yourselves in the foot like the Falcons have consistently done on a weekly basis this year, like, it's hard to see this Jets offense really doing a whole lot against this Falcons defense, given, they want to run the football, but the Falcons have a good job stopping the run. And, Garrett Wilson's a very good wide receiver, but I think the Falcons have the cornerbacks that can slow him down. And then you look at the rest of the Jets offense and you're not looking at anything that's particularly scary. You talked about the offensive line issues that they have. You should be able to get after the quarterback. So this, has all the makings of being, a game where the Falcons can hold the Jets to under 14 points, and the Falcons should be able to score more than 14 points in this game, as long as they don't just, they can play mistake free.
Yeah, and it was okay, well, I know, that's post edit, but you could have cussed right there. I know they just don't turn the ball over, Yeah, and I think this is one of those games where I feel like Arthur Smith wants to continue to establish himself, establish his vision for this offense. So I would not be surprised. I know they're going to run the football. I know that's the key to success, but I feel like he wants to be able to throw the football in this game too, because like there are times and spots that he wants to pick to be able to throw those balls and take some shots, because that's one of the reasons why I feel like Desmond Ridder was inserted back into as a starter of this team, because let's keep it funky. Taylor Heinicke has some limitations in certain areas to be able to throw the football to, and I think that's where his issues are. That's where Desmond Ridder has his strength. That's why sometimes he can get Desmond Ridder in trouble, because he thinks he can make every doggone throw, in very tight windows. So, but I think in order for them to do that, they have to have success running the ball when it comes to play action, because if you are able to establish that, like, this can be a game where, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if they do 24, 28 points, on the road. It's just a matter of getting to that space to be able to take advantage of it. And it all starts with the run game.
Yeah, I agree. So, the run game got a boost from a certain someone named Parker Hesse, I think his name is. And so that was one change that we saw coming out of the bye week. Another change that we saw was more playing time for DeMarcco Hellams, something that Jarvis himself suggested last week when we last spoke with him going into the bye week, as one of the changes we wanted to get. And there were some other changes, and we'll discuss whether or not the Falcons need to continue down that road, maybe some other tweaks that Jarvis wants to suggest that they may wind up making, and we'll get into all of that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater near you. They have views from your seat, all in prices, last minute killer deals, and they have their best price guaranteed, and they're taking all the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Those all-in prices mean that you're not going to get hit with hidden fees. You can buy tickets in seconds up to the start of your event, and Game Time's guaranteed means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, they'll credit you 110% the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time by downloading the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for a $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And as I mentioned, we saw some tweaks coming out of the bye week with the lineup. Certain players got more playing time. We saw an increased role for DeMarcco Hellams alongside Richie Grant. And I thought Hellams played his best game. I thought Richie Grant played arguably his best game of the year. So it feels like that was a benefit. We saw a bigger role for Cordero Patterson, who's outside of that one game where Bijan was hurt, really hasn't been a featured part of the Falcons offense, but very much the Falcons were able to take advantage of that. And really, I think you felt that energy and that physicality that he runs with in this Saints game. Parker Hesse, another player I mentioned, been talking about all year long on Locked On Falcons, that perimeter blocking that the Falcons have not been getting this year is a big reason why their run game has not been as effective. And you insert Parker Hesse back in the lineup, and all of a sudden, the perimeter blocking's looking really good again. That was indicated, it wasn't just Parker Hesse. Other players on the offensive line really stepped up, and that's probably the real reason why the Falcons ran the ball, because Matthew Bergeron had his best game. Caleb McGarry looked like he was like, "I don't need you, Dad," and then Chris Lyncham. If you guys don't know that, please go check out those.
Yeah, let him in, man. It sounds like an inside joke now.
But go check out the football party that we recorded earlier this week with Tori McElhaney on Locked On Sports Atlanta or on your Locked On Falcons podcast feed. But we even saw Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers, like, where's Trey Flowers been since September? And he made some plays in his game. I was like, okay, Trey Flowers, and
Absolutely.
talking about with previous guests, like, hey, maybe Trey Flowers can be part of this dime package or whatever. So we saw all these tweaks, Jarvis. Which one of these tweaks do you want to see more of? Or are there other tweaks that you want to see this team with some of these adjustments for this home stretch as we hope to see the best version of this Falcons team over the next 6 games?
I want to see more of Dee Alford. I wholeheartedly believe him as the nickel guy, because Mike Hughes sometimes gets on my nerves, and it can be a little frustrating to watch. And they understand why he was a free agent, and they were able to pick him up. But seriously though, I think Dee Alford is the guy that I've always liked when he first came in. Love the story, playing in the CFL. We went to Tusculum, I believe, D2 school. And he had to go a different route to get here. Yeah, but he's here, and the guy is a guy that he's sticky in coverage. I love cornerbacks that, even though they might catch the ball, he's always there. Like, you never see him chasing too much. Like, oh man, this dude got beat by 2-3 yards, or he just got lost in coverage. You don't see that often with him. It happens, but you don't see it often. That's what you look for when you're talking about looking at cornerbacks and kind of determining whether or not those guys can be some good football players. And I think Dee Alford is definitely that. And I thought DeMarcco Hellams did a solid job, coming in and, stepping in like that. And to be honest with you, and I like the fact that how they used him too, because you didn't see Richard Grant just nowhere to be found after they put Hellams in. He came back in the game, and they were kind of working those guys, different packages and everything like that. So I'm okay with that. Like, I don't want, Richard Grant to be sat down forever. But, I do need for him to understand, like, you can't be in there missing tackles at this point in your career. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you came in to be known as a pretty solid tackler, and for you to be missing open field tackles, like, nah, like, you're a safety. You know you're going to be in space a lot of the times, and you're going to have to make tackles and get guys on the ground, and you just can't be in a situation where you're just missing, because it messes you up a lot. Like, we've seen how different this defense has looked before the Saints game and before the bye week. In those 3 games, they didn't look like the team that we thought they were. One of the reasons why, missed tackles. Like, you put everybody in a bad situation when you missing tackles like that. So, especially in a solo situation. So yeah, I think I love the adjustments that Ryan Nielsen made. So if I can see a little bit more Dee Alford, Hellams and Grant, I like the rotation. Keep working that, and because those guys have different skill sets that'll kind of benefit you in different situations. So I think that's one more. And also, hey man, like, the more 17 can be out there in pass rush situations, the better. Especially when you're talking about going up against offensive line like the Jets.
Yeah, I agree. I hope they keep it going. I hope we get to see more of some of these players that have been forgotten. Like Trey Flowers, like DeMarcco Hellams, etc. So we'll see what other changes are made. Post bye week. If some of these were just, hey, this was just specific to this Saints game, or is this something that we'll see more of? Similar to how at last year we saw more of Troy Anderson, after the bye week, and of course Desmond Ridder getting the start after the bye week, and that had implications not only for last season but this season. With you want to see some of these young guys carry that over into the next year. So we'll see if some of these guys can step up over these last 6 games, and what that not only means to help this team win games in 2023, but potentially setting up guys for bigger roles and bigger opportunities in 2024. So that is going to be it for us here on today's Locked On Falcons. Jarvis, go ahead and plug what people where people can find you, and what else you got going on. Of course, I believe NFL Kickoff Live still going. Am I
NFL Kickoff Live? We're back. We took the holiday off, but we're back tomorrow, or on Friday, to do the NFL Kickoff Live show at 2:00. You can check it out on this channel, the Locked On Falcons channel on YouTube, and also wherever you download your podcast. Come on now, we get this. That's how we get down. And also, check out Locked On Sports Atlanta. We have the Locked On Hawks postcast after games, right after games. You can check out, into the Hawks. That's what you can do too. So, and also the Georgia Bulldogs after the SEC championship will be live. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on Locked On Sports Atlanta. So make sure you check that out, and also make sure to check out Locked On the NFL Kickoff Live show right on this audio feed and on YouTube as well.
Yeah, there you go. Locked On NFL Kickoff Live, 2 p.m. Eastern time, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
There you go.
It's going down.
So check that out Friday. Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Of course, always great stuff coming with Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll be back, of course, with a postcast on Sunday afternoon. Hopefully we'll be joined by Tanitra Batiste, but she's always running around. So, we don't know if, it's like, oh, okay, Tanitra's going to be here. But
yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
The queen graces with her presence.
Yeah, pretty much, and then it's just us 2 knuckleheads just like sitting there just giggling.
We'll be there, It's just a matter of the queen going to show up,
So
how it is.
Check out the postcast on Locked On Sports Atlanta live after that final whistle. And of course, you can find it on your audio feeds here on Locked On Falcons, of course, with the full Locked On Falcons post-game recap, rapid reaction, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully we will not be sitting here being like, hey, same old Falcons.
I know, man.
Doing terrible stuff. So hopefully we'll be like, hey, this Falcon team, this is different. So we'll see what's what on Sunday. But guys, really appreciate it. Continue to check us out. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every